Marvel Rivals has been taking over recently, and to be honest, I didn't even expect myself to be talking about this game as much as I have been. If you've been watching this channel recently, you probably noticed that I've been doing a lot more Marvel content, and you guys have been absolutely loving it. So to be honest, I figured, why not take it a step further? I've already talked about Marvel games, I've talked about X-Men Legends, I've talked about that upcoming Wolverine game, even Spider-Man, and I've talked about the future of Marvel gaming, so let's take it a step further. Let's talk about Marvel Rivals. But instead of talking about, the current roster or like the meta of the game or whatever topics those are, I want to talk about the characters that I want to see added to the game. And I don't want just another generic top 10 Marvel Rival characters that I want in the game and then leave it like that. I want to do something a little more interesting. I'm picking 2 characters for each class, 2 strategists, 2 duelists, and 2 vanguards, and more importantly, I'm going to explain exactly how I think they should play, because I don't want these characters just to be added because they're popular. I want them to actually bring something different to Marvel Rivals. So let's get on to my Marvel Rivals wishlist. But if you guys don't know me by now, I'm MrFrostyFlamez, but you can call me Mike. We do anything gaming, news, reviews, playthroughs, etc., and we do it in a chill way. So if you enjoy that style of content, be sure to hit that sub button and join the MrFrostyFlamez Legion. Anyways, let's get back to the video. Let's start with probably the most OP class in Marvel Rivals, and that's the Strategist. Because this is probably the hardest class for me to pick characters for, because when you think about Marvel, there are so many characters that theoretically could be support characters, but I wanted characters that could actually have unique gameplay. And here's my first pick, and it could absolutely be insane. My first pick is Quicksilver. Remember him? He's like Wanda's brother, right? As a strategist, now I know what you're thinking. How the hell is Quicksilver a strategist? He's fast. He could probably go into the backline as a duelist and just take everybody out. But to be honest, as a strategist, that's exactly why I want him, because I don't want every strategist just to be somebody standing in the back throwing healing projectiles at people. Quicksilver could be a completely different type of support. He could be all about mobility and saving teammates. Think about how fast this character is. He could run into danger, perhaps the backline, grab a teammate, and get them out before the enemy even realizes what happened. His basic attack could be something like rapid punches or strikes that build up momentum, but his abilities are where I think this gets really interesting. Now, for example, his first ability, he could target an ally, dash to them, grab them, and physically pull them out of danger while healing them. You could literally save somebody who's about to get eliminated. Imagine your teammates getting jumped by maybe a duelist and a tank or something, and instead of healing them from across the map, Quicksilver just flies in, grabs them, and gets them behind cover. That would be so satisfying. His second ability, maybe he could leave an after image wherever he moves at high speeds. The after image could distract enemies, maybe even absorb a small amount of damage. This would make him incredibly difficult to pin down. And his third ability could maybe be something like a momentum transfer, where he could transfer some of his accumulated momentum into a teammate. Basically, maybe he runs into the battlefield building up momentum, then he gives an ally a temporary movement speed and attack speed boost. Now imagine giving Wolverine a massive speed boost or letting Spider-Man zip around even faster. That would be hilarious. And for his ultimate, I chose maybe he could turn Quicksilver into a blur. For several seconds, he becomes extremely difficult to hit while running rapidly between teammates and restoring their health. Instead of just giving one giant burst heal, it would be like a team-wide rescue ultimate, and I think that fits Quicksilver perfectly. He isn't a traditional healer. He's the guy who makes sure your teammates never stay in danger long enough to need one. And the next character that I chose was almost made for the strategist class, and that's Professor X, man. This one is obvious because I think you could really make him interesting, because Professor X shouldn't be sitting in the back throwing little psychic bullets. He should be controlling the battlefield. Maybe his basic attack, he could fire controlled psychic projectiles. I mean, nothing crazy, because the real focus should be his abilities, maybe a mental command. He could temporarily disrupt an enemy, not necessarily mind control them completely, but maybe interrupt their ability. Imagine an enemy is charging an ultimate or is in the process of doing an ultimate, and Professor X hits them with a mental command and briefly just interrupts it or blocks it. That's exactly the kind of utility I'd want from him. And maybe he could develop a psychic field that reveals enemies through walls for his team. Maybe he could also provide small amounts of healing or damage resistance to teammates inside the area. This would make him the ultimate information based strategist. He knows where everyone is, and your team could plan around that. And maybe you could link Professor X to a teammate, and while linked, A percentage of damage dealt by that teammate could restore their health, or Professor X could maybe redirect a portion of incoming damage. Basically, he's mentally supporting them from the backline. And for his ultimate, this is where I would go absolutely crazy. Maybe he unleashes like a massive psychic wave and enemies caught inside become temporarily incapacitated. Like not stunned forever, not completely helpless, but their abilities are disabled for a short period and they're disoriented. Maybe like a Papagano las luces or something like that for a strategist. You know, if you play Overwatch, you get it. Like a huge EMP. Like imagine a team fight, the enemy is about to unleash like 5 ultimates, but Professor X just says no. Or maybe like what if they're in the middle of the ultimate and he could just like EMP them and just like disable everything. That would be one of the most satisfying ultimates in the game, and something to actually shut down maybe like an Invisible Woman ult, or maybe like a Cloak and Dagger ult or something. And unlike Quicksilver, Professor X would be a more traditional strategist. He'd focus on like information, disruption, crowd control, and just healing. And also with the hype around the X-Men and X-Men 97, this is a perfect time to add him. But now let's move on to Duelists, and these two are characters that I think could absolutely be ridiculous. My first pick is probably one of the most obvious characters Marvel could add, and that's Green Goblin. This one needs to happen eventually, because imagine him flying around the battlefield on his glider, throwing pumpkin bombs, launching explosives, and just causing absolute chaos. He should absolutely be a highly mobile ranged duelist. Like his basic attack could throw small explosive bombs, you know, nothing too complicated, but they could have different effects depending on the type, maybe like incendiary bombs or concussive or toxic, and you could cycle through different pumpkin bombs. And maybe like his first ability, he could jump onto his glider and rapidly fly forward. He could use it like as an escape, or he could use it to dive into enemies or reposition vertically. And I want him to have really good aerial mobility, because if you're playing Green Goblin, you should feel like you're flying around on the battlefield. And maybe he could throw a pumpkin on the ground that just activates when an enemy gets close. It could launch upward like a bouncing Betty, something like a Penny Parker mine or something, but just like a special effect tied to it, not just like a regular mine. Maybe some like crowd control potential without actually turning him into like a Vanguard. And maybe make his glider part of his normal kit. You could toggle between being grounded and being airborne. Grounded Goblin maybe has like stronger explosives and maybe a different set of abilities. Maybe airborne Goblin has like more mobility. That would make him a very technical duelist. And his ultimate could be like he launches like a massive bomb into the enemy team, but instead of just exploding, it splits into like several small explosives, basically like a chain reaction. You have explosions going everywhere, and I want the ultimate to feel completely chaotic, because if Green Goblin isn't causing absolute mayhem, what's the point of even having him into the game? Maybe he could have something like Wrecking Ball's ultimate, you know, where it's just like a minefield of bombs, but instead of just like a minefield, they're actually just bombs exploding everywhere. That would be awesome. And the second duelist that I picked was actually Gamora, and I think Gamora could be one of the coolest melee duelists in the entire game. Her entire identity is being one of the greatest assassins in the galaxy, so she should be like a precision melee character, not like Wolverine, not like Black Panther, not Iron Fist, something different. Maybe her sword would obviously be her main weapon, right, her primary weapon, something fast, something precise and deadly. I'd give her like a combo system where different attacks have different properties, maybe like light attacks are fast, heavy attacks have more armor penetration, and maybe like a charged attack could like break defensive abilities, like maybe like a Magneto bubble or something. Gamora like could have an ability where she just instantly dashes like behind an enemy, and if she hits an enemy from behind, she deals bonus damage. That could be like a passive, and this gives her real assassination identity. Maybe she could briefly like enter like a defensive stance, and if an enemy attacks her during that window, she parries and immediately counterattacks. That would make her extremely skill based, you know, you're trying to predict the enemy's moves. And she could also have an ability where she charges her sword with energy, and maybe her next attack deals massive damage and partially ignores shields. This would make her especially dangerous against Vanguards. And for her ultimate, she could lock onto multiple enemies and rapidly dash between them, striking each one. It sounds like Psylocke, but maybe instead of like a circle AoE that Psylocke has, it could just be like everybody that Gamora is looking at. She could just rapidly dash to them and strike them from behind, you know, no matter how far they are. Like, she could just like be like across the map and just boom, just strike them in like a massive, you know, sword strike, deal massive damage. I wouldn't make it like an instant team wipe, but instead, the better you position yourself, the more enemies you could hit, you know. So it's like a high skill ultimate, something like a McCree ultimate or Cassidy from Overwatch, where you're just locking onto everybody and then boom, you do it, you hit everybody at the same time. That's exactly how I think Gamora should play. She's not just running into the enemy team, she's picking targets, eliminating them, and getting out. And finally, we have the Vanguards, and these two might be my favorite picks on the entire list because I just don't want two big characters who just stand there and absorb bullets. I want tanks that completely change how fights work. And my first pick is Medusa, the Inhumans, that girl with the hair, because Medusa as a Vanguard would be amazing. And I don't specifically want her to just be like another giant health bar. I want her to be like a crowd control tank, and her hair is the perfect mechanic for it. Think about how much potential that has. She could like grab enemies, pull them, push them, hold them in place, or just like block pathways with her hair, because that's her powers. And for her signature ability, maybe she could like wrap her hair around somebody and immobilize them. But here's the important part. She could choose to pull them towards her or push them away, so you're constantly making decisions, maybe like pull an enemy into your team or push like a dangerous duelist or tank away from your strategist. That would make her incredibly useful. She could also possibly like maybe create a hardened wall of hair in front of herself. This could block projectiles, give her teammates cover, and temporarily change the geometry of the battlefield. This is where she'd become a true Vanguard. And maybe she could grab an enemy with several strands of hair, maybe multiple at once, maybe like 3 or more, lift them slightly and slam them to the ground. A good crowd control ability that rewards just great positioning. And for her ultimate, she could basically just like control the entire area and basically make it her territory. What I'm talking about is she could like spread her hair through the ground, creating like a massive control zone, and enemies inside are like slowed. Her hair automatically just like lashes out at enemies who get too close, and Medusa could gain like increased resistance or something while she's in the zone. Just imagine like an enemy team trying to push through that. They'd basically be walking through a jungle of living hair. That would be so unique for Marvel Rivals, and that's what I want from them. Not just another tank, a tank that controls massive amounts of space. And finally, the last character on my list is Juggernaut. This might be the easiest character to design because there's only really one thing I want from Juggernaut. I want him to just run straight through everything and straight through people. That's it. That's the character. That's his powers actually, because there could actually be some really interesting mechanics around it. Maybe like his basic attack would be slow but extremely powerful punches. Every punch should feel like it weighs 1,000 pounds, deal massive damage, but it's slow. And his first ability is obviously like a charge. He gets into his iconic running stance and he just charges forward. He cannot be interrupted. He smashes through enemies, smashes through walls, smashes through environmental objects, and sends enemies flying. The longer he charges, the more momentum he builds, and maybe that could lead into one of his core mechanics where the more momentum he hits you with, the more damage he deals, but the further back he like launches you. And also he could probably have like a self-buffing ability where he gains increased damage resistance. But here's the twist. While that ability is active, damage taken gets converted into increased knockback on his next attack. So basically the more you hit him, the harder he hits back. You could hit him with like a hard ability, something that deals crazy damage, and he's just gonna take a percentage of that, convert it into his own damage and momentum, and hit you back harder. That would be cool. And maybe for his third ability, he could slam both fists into the ground and like a giant shockwave just travels outward. Enemies caught in the shockwave are just knocked upward, and this would give him a little bit of crowd control too for a tank. And for his ultimate, this is the obvious one. He starts running and he never stops. He charges across the whole battlefield, enemies get knocked away, walls get smashed through, players just get flattened. Maybe like you could just get flattened, you don't even go flying. He just like straight up just knocks you down and you're just on the ground, you cannot get up, and the enemy team has to scramble. Like imagine hearing like his ultimate line and then just seeing Juggernaut charging directly towards your strategist. You're running, you're trying to escape, but he's still coming. He's not gonna stop coming. Nothing could stop him. That would be hilarious and terrifying at the same time. And to be honest, this probably was one of my more unexpected videos I made recently because I didn't originally plan on going this hard into Marvel Rivals, but you guys have been absolutely absolutely loving the Marvel content lately, so that's why I wanted to experiment with this video. I'm still going to be making my usual videos like other Marvel videos and Mortal Kombat FGC videos. I'm still going to be talking about other games too, but if you guys do enjoy these Marvel videos, then maybe Marvel Rivals or other Marvel games could become something that we come back to more often, especially because there are so many Marvel characters that could fit into this game, and there are so many topics I've yet to cover of this game, and that's what makes Rivals so interesting and exciting for people that like care about this game and care about the content. The possibilities are endless. So now I want to hear your wish list. If you could add 2 strategists, 2 duelists, and 2 vanguards into Marvel Rivals, who are you picking? And most importantly, how would you make them play? Let me know in the comments down below. But if you enjoyed this video, please like, share, comment, and subscribe to join the MrFrostyFlamez Legion. Thank you guys for watching. MrFrostyFlamez out. Yeah.